Welcome to the Oracle Enterprise Manager video training series. My name is Carolyn Louie, and I'm a Principal Product Manager for Enterprise Manager. This is a video recording of Enterprise Manager's Metric Extensions Overview. Enterprise Manager is Oracle's integrated IT operations management product line. By engineering management capabilities together with the underlying technology being managed, Oracle is able to deliver efficiency gains that are unprecedented in the IT industry. In Enterprise Manager, there are three main pillars which make up the core features of the product. The first pillar on the left is monitoring. The second pillar in the middle is cloud and on-premise stack management. And the third pillar on the right is lifecycle management. In EM13C, we built on top of the 12C foundation and enhanced each of the pillars. In the first pillar, we've introduced a new always-on monitoring, which allows continuous monitoring of targets even when Enterprise Manager is down. In the second pillar, we've introduced a new infrastructure management feature, which brings together the software and hardware management capabilities of EM to provide you with a single pane of glass. In the third pillar, we've made enhancements to the lifecycle management of your on-premise, hybrid, and cloud environments. Together, these three pillars provide a single solution to manage all of your IT assets, whether it be on-premise, hybrid, or in the cloud. Our program agenda is as follows. We will cover metric extensions and also talk about repository-side metric extensions. Following that, we will cover the new metric extension features released in EM13C. We will review some use cases for metric extensions and then have a short demo to cover what can be done after a metric extension is published and deployed to a target. Many of our customers who have used older EM releases, such as 10G and 11G, are using user-defined metrics. User-defined metric is the first generation of custom self-defined metrics, which extends Enterprise Manager's monitoring capability. It is available in EM10G and 11G, but has some limitations. For example, user-defined metrics only collects point values through execution of OS scripts and SQL scripts. If the OS or SQL script requires dependent files, the user needs to manually transfer these files to the target's file system. User-defined metrics using OS scripts cannot model child objects of servers by returning multiple rows from a metric. Due to this, multiple pieces of data must be collected by creating multiple user-defined metrics. Finally, the biggest limitation is that user-defined metrics only supports host and database target types. To overcome these limitations, in EM12C, we introduced metric extensions as the next generation of user-defined metrics. Metric extensions are full-fledged metrics similar to EM's out-of-the-box metrics. They are handled in the same way as a metric provided by Enterprise Manager. In addition, metric extensions are exposed in all monitoring features, which means you can see them in the All Metrics page and view historical graphs and reports for them. Metric extensions allow you to extend your monitoring scope because you can create your own metrics to suit your needs. With the new metrics defined, you can set up warning and critical thresholds to be alerted on and take advantage of EM's out-of-the-box capabilities such as historical trending and reporting. Unlike user-defined metrics, metric extensions can be built for all target types. After selecting a target type, there is one or more adapters available to build the metric extension. Examples of these adapters are OS command, where a shell script is run at the OS level. If the target type is a database, we have a SQL adapter that can run PL SQL scripts on the database. We also have adapters for SNMP and JMX to support management information-based files and middleware servers. Metric extensions has a full lifecycle support. There are three phases involved. First, you develop your metric extension, then you test it, and then you deploy it. The nice thing about metric extensions is that you can export and import them. That means you can create it once and import it into other EM instances. There are many use cases and examples that you can find on My Oracle support for metric extensions. If you search for Enterprise Manager metric extension on the internet, you will find many examples there also. We will cover some of these use cases at the end of this video. In summary, you are free to create your own metric and define alerting thresholds for notification purposes. There are a couple of tutorials available online to walk you through the metric extension creation and deployment process. These videos are extremely helpful and walk you through the creation and deployment process step by step. Please review the videos if you are not familiar with metric extensions. User-defined metrics that exist in older EM releases will still be available after upgrading to Enterprise Manager 12c. They can be propagated to new targets in EM12c using monitoring templates. However, starting with EM12c, new user-defined metrics can no longer be created. If you are using user-defined metrics, we strongly recommend that you convert them to metric extensions in EM12c. There is a set of command line interface verbs available in EM12 and 13c to help you migrate your user-defined metrics to metric extensions. Step-by-step instructions and examples on how to do this can be found in the Converting User-Defined Metrics to Metric Extensions chapter from the Enterprise Manager Administrator's Guide. Please note that user-defined metrics is not supported in EM13c and will no longer work in EM13c. The user-defined metrics UI is no longer available in 13c. We strongly encourage all customers to migrate user-defined metrics to metric extensions in EM12c prior to upgrading to 13c. In EM 12.104, we introduced repository-side metric extensions. This type of metric extension allows you to use SQL scripts to extract information directly from the Enterprise Manager repository and raise alerts for the target against which the repository-side extension is run. Repository-side metrics allows you to send alerts based on multiple metric alerts on the same target or on different targets. For example, you can use repository-side metric extensions to alert when both CPU utilization and total percentage disk available metrics have crossed the threshold for critical state. Or you can use repository-side metric extensions to calculate average table space usage per minute or alert when someone logs into EM as the sysmin user. Repository-side metrics allows you to monitor your infrastructure with greater flexibility. Starting with EM13c, you can now calculate a metric column based on the value from another metric column. This new feature is called Compute Expressions. With Compute Expressions, you can do arithmetic operations between columns in the same metric extension. An example of this is you want to get the percentage free space. To get this value, first we use a script to get the used disk space and total disk space. Then we get the free disk space by subtracting total disk space from used disk space. Finally, we divide free disk space by total disk space and multiply that by 100 to get the percentage free space. This feature extends metric extension's capabilities further by allowing users to compute values within the metric extension itself. On this slide, the left-hand side shows the operators available for compute expressions. There are many operators available to suit your needs. On the right-hand side is a screenshot of the space usage metric extension example mentioned on the previous slide. Notice the compute expression column shows the calculations derived from other available columns in the metric extension. Another enhancement in EM13c is there is a new advanced properties for database metric extensions. In 13c, you can now specify the scope of the metric extension to be at the database instance or container level. The new advanced properties option will only appear if you are creating a metric extension for a database instance or cluster database target type. When you create the metric extension, you can specify what type of database the metric extension can be deployed to. A sample use case for this feature is you want to use a monitoring template to deploy a metric extension only to rack instance database but not to single instance database. To achieve this, you can select rack instance only as the instance scope. You can even further refine the scope of the database target by specifying the container database scope to be CDB only or exclude CDB. This feature can also be used to instruct the metric extension to be applied to a group of databases based on its data status. The available option for each property is listed to the left of the screenshot. Please note that this feature is only available starting with EM 13.1. The first use case we will review is a runaway query metric extension. A runaway query is a query whose execution time is taking longer than the time estimated by the optimizer. Runaway queries can consume too much CPU or other resources during its execution. It is critical to find and eliminate these types of issues from the application code to ensure good application performance. To achieve that, you can deploy a metric extension to your database targets. The metric extension runs a SQL query on the database target to find SQLs that consume too much CPU or takes too long to execute. The query only captures SQLs that are either finished or in a running state. It is up to the DBA to define the warning and critical thresholds for this metric extension. In the example below, the critical threshold is 300 seconds. As you can see, alerts were generated when one of the SQL execution time reached 614 seconds. At this point, the next step would be to take the SQL ID generated from the alert and investigate further into the problem. The second use case is a pluggable database status metric extension. In a multi-tenant environment, when a pluggable database goes down, the open mode is changed from read-write to mounted. This metric extension runs a SQL query on the container database to get the status of the pluggable database. When a pluggable database goes down, its status changes to mounted. The metric extension will generate an alert and report the pluggable database is down on the cluster database. In this example, there is a pluggable database called test.pdb which is down. As you can see, this triggered an alert and the administrator will be notified. The third use case is a batch job elapsed time metric extension. This use case was provided by an Oracle product manager for the Oracle Utilities product. He created a metric extension to query a custom view for the batch run tree. The metric extension gets the minimum, average, and maximum elapsed time and throughput of each batch job running on the Oracle Utilities application framework. As with any metric, an alert is generated when the defined thresholds are crossed. In this example, an alert was triggered for the F1 batch job as the average elapsed time is unusually high. For the demo, we will explore how to navigate to the target homepage from the metric extensions page. From the target homepage, we will look at the results of a metric extension which has been deployed to that target. Following that, we will look at the features available to modify the threshold, compare targets, and compare keys. To go to the metric extensions page, click on Enterprise, Monitoring, and then Metric Extensions. Metric extensions will have a name prefixed with ME $. So here we have a metric extension named Runaway SQL. This metric extension is published, which means it has been tested and is ready for use. As you can see, the metric extension has been deployed to one target. To see the list of deployed targets, click on the link in the Deploy Targets column. Let's go ahead and click on the link for the target. Now that we are in the target homepage, go to Monitoring and then All Metrics. In the All Metrics page, you will see a list of all the metrics available for the target. In this case, since this is a container database, you will see metrics related to the database. Metric extensions will have a yellow star icon in front of the metric name. For example, database version and runaway SQL are both metric extension metrics, whereas the rest of the metrics are out-of-the-box metrics available for the target. Let's go ahead and expand the runaway SQL metric. Here we will see a list of columns available for the metric extension. To see detailed information for each of the columns, simply highlight it. Number of executions is a number column, which means you will see an average value, low value, high value, and last known value columns for it. Current severity, alert triggered, and last collection timestamp are default data available for all columns within the metric extension. Another type of column is a string column for the metric extension. For example, sample user is a string column. In this case, you will see the last collected value column for it. It looks like we have a critical alert for the total CPU time. Let's go ahead and highlight that to get more information. As you can see, there is a critical alert for 2 of the sequels that are running on this target. Let's go ahead and highlight one of them to get more details. In the bottom pane, you will see more information about this sequel. For example, you have the sequel ID, as well as the last known value, collection timestamp, average value, and low-high value. On the right-hand side, you will see the thresholds defined for this metric, as well as the comparison operator, occurrences before alert, and corrective actions. You can modify the thresholds by clicking on the Modify Thresholds button. In the Modify Thresholds pop-up window, you can change the warning threshold and critical threshold, as well as occurrences before alert, and test the new thresholds. The threshold suggestion chart is a visual diagram to show you if your current historical data will trigger a warning or a critical alert. You can choose how much historical data you want to see by clicking on the day, week, month, or all links. Right now what we are seeing is the past day's data. Let's go ahead and click on week to see more. As you can see right now, we are looking at the past week's data. If you want to zoom into a particular day's data, you can click on 2 hours or 15 minutes. Going back to the past day data, we can expand the slider bar in order to pick and choose how much data we want to see. Here we've expanded the slider bar to show the past 3 weeks worth of data. In addition, there is also a calendar icon that you can click on to pick and choose exactly what the start date, start time, end date, and end time is for the threshold suggestion chart. Finally, after you have modified your thresholds to suit your needs, you can click on Save Thresholds and the new threshold will take effect. The Compare Keys button will allow you to compare the selected row of data with other rows of data. Let's go ahead and pick one to compare with. Looking at the legend for the graph, the blue line is for SQL ID starting with AHPP, and the green line is for SQL ID starting with C3H1. Please note that the Compare Keys button will only be available for metric extensions of which there is a key column. To see the metric value history for only the selected row of SQL ID, click on Reset Graph. The Compare Targets button is available for all metrics containing numerical data. This feature is available for out-of-the-box metrics in addition to metric extensions. The Compare Targets feature will compare metric data collected for the current target with the metric data collected from other targets. To demo this feature, we will look at the database time centiseconds per second metric, which is a standard database metric that comes out of the box with EM. Let's click on Compare Targets. This will bring us to the Select Targets pop-up, where we can select one or more targets to compare with. We will select the EVA3 target to compare. Similar to the Compare Key feature, the Compare Targets feature will display metric data for the selected targets on the same metric value history graph. This gives us a quick visual cue as to which database is consuming more database time. As a standard functionality for all graphs, you can hover over any point in the graph to see the data value. You can also click on the Table View link to see the data in a linear table format. For more information about metric extensions, please refer to the online documentation. This concludes the video for metric extensions. Thank you for watching.